You right there, guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're taking a look at first and only Anzio Camp, a large outdoor site near Leek that has plenty of open space, but also, most importantly, a lot of full-sized, fully playable buildings to fight through. I've been quite a few times over the years, but it is always on my shortlist to come back to, so let's see how it's looking these days. So, Anzio Camp is located just north of Leek in the Peak District. It's quite easy to get to because it's directly on the A53, but don't be surprised if people drive past the entrance gate on their first time. If you see a large hangar-like building with a green metal gate directly on the main road, you're in the right place. The safe zone is situated immediately off the main road, with the main places for parking being a large hangar-like structure and an additional location just before the game zone. There's plenty of parking in this safe zone, but you will need to take your time and maneuver carefully with your car, as it can be quite tight between other parked cars and other players walking around or setting up. As for facilities, they do have portaloos on site, and whilst the safe zone is spacious and well constructed, you will probably have to set up at the back of your car if you are in the hangar. So, walk-on prices for the day then. They are £40 if you are not a member. If you are a member, depending on your tier of membership, it would either be £35 or £30. And if you are looking to hire for the first time there, it will be £55. This comes included with a face mask, rifle, and a single high cap worth of ammo. So I'd estimate about 300 rounds worth. Lunch is not included as part of any of these prices, and they don't serve hot food on the day. They do have cold food available, hot drinks, and a very well-stocked shop for airsoft consumables, gas, pyro, like BBs, but also plenty of riffs as well that you can have a browse through. So surprisingly well-stocked for an on-site airsoft shop, I thought. 40 quid, I think, is leaning a bit on the expensive side for a full day of airsoft for me personally. But this is offset by the fact that this is an exceptionally unique site. This isn't just some woodland that someone set up in and got a couple of wooden shacks. Actual buildings on site, there are vehicles roaming around, so you are paying for a little bit of the extras during the day as well. So yes, it is on the expensive side, but you kind of get your money's worth out of it. If you are looking to bring that price down and you want to come back often, definitely look at memberships, because they can reduce that price from 40 to 35 to 30 depending on your membership tier. So if you're planning on coming back to the site often, really something to consider there. So the impression that I got from staff on the day then. My thoughts are that they are running an exceptionally tight ship on a fast schedule, and they don't have the time to accommodate for individual players if you're taking too long or if you're messing about. So they recommend that you turn up half an hour early on the day, so probably about 8:30 time. Due to traffic, I was delayed and I actually got a few minutes behind, so I was kind of rushing a little bit to get set up and ready for the morning brief. They do say that if you miss that first brief, they will do a second one, but anyone that misses the first brief is also going to miss the first game, so that's kind of on them for that. And during that first brief, I did actually witness them turn away a player who tried to join mid-brief, so it is good that they are, one, enforcing the rule they set out, and two, allowing that secondary safety brief if someone is late, so, they can still get in the game later, but they're not being allowed during the first game without being briefed. So yes, no, it's good to see that that was the case. I did get a bit of an insight into their philosophy of how to run a site as well. And what I mean by this, the best example is the chrono checks. So the chrono station's open all day, basically. It's right immediately past the safe zone netting. You can go and chrono your guns at any time. However, when I went to go and chrono, no staff member was actually watching at the time. Like, I know what my guns were chronoed. I know I was shooting under, but there was not a staff member that witnessed that, and they weren't handing out tags on the day. What they did instead is random spot checks throughout the day. So if you bring a gun onto the field, a staff member at any point can pull you to one side, I'm chronoing your gun now. And if you are running a hot gun, that's it, you're done for the day. They're just getting you off site straight up. So the philosophy seems to be then harshly punish rule breakers as opposed to preemptively stop problems before they happen. Their reasoning for this was covered in the morning safety brief, because with tech available to players these days, it's really simple for someone to just pass a chrono test in the morning, take their gun back to the safe zone, swap out the spring for a bigger one, or up the gas on their HPA rig. So they don't put as much value in the morning chrono test. They prefer to spot check people on the day. So it's more about punishing rule breakers as opposed to preventing them. And I can see where they're coming from with this. I don't think their reasoning's unjustified. I can understand why it works. I would recommend, however, do both. Do both. There's no harm in doing both. Like, if you have that thing at the start of the day, what it does is, A, it sets the standard for players, and B, it prevents any accidental cases of people running a hot gun. And yes, I know that sounds a bit far-fetched, but it's not impossible that someone's brought a brand new gun, they don't know what it's shooting. They've had it recently brought back from tech work. It's got a brand new spring in it, it's not quite settled yet, it's shooting hotter than intended. By doing that morning one, you eliminate any of the accidentals. Any people that unintentionally was running a bit of a hot one, and you can stop that before an incident happens midday. So, whilst I understand their reasoning for just mainly relying on spot checks, but having the chrono open for people all day, but not doing the tags, I think a bit of both. A bit of both would definitely be helpful here. But yeah, again, I think that really does show like the philosophy of staff on site here. They're more about punishing rule breakers as opposed to preventing. So, and when they're dealing with the amount of players they have during the day, because this was like end of January. It was a cold day and they still had like 100 players on site, easy. So I can understand why they can't afford to waste time on like individual people and trying to sort out things on a case-by-case basis. Like when you're dealing with that number of players, you need to just have solidified rules, and if you break them, then tough. So whilst I don't entirely agree, I understand and I can see what they're going for. I can see how it works. I think maybe the preventative would also help, is my opinion. So what about the players then? So the site's quite large in both the actual site itself and the safe zone. So it's really kind of hard to actually just get talking to people you don't know on this site, because you're not clustered into like a cramped safe zone like on other ones. You're not forced into conversation with them. You can just hang out by your car. So it's really quite hard to make a natural happening conversation. Not impossible, don't get me wrong. But yeah, the impression I got from players, however, all decent people. Like, its spirits were high during the day, even though it was a very cold game day. There was an instance or two of non-hit taking that did make me raise my eyebrow, but one, this is airsoft, it happens. I didn't think it was particularly an egregious amount of it. And two, this is a very big site with a lot of players. There's a lot of corners for them to hide in, like dark areas and everything. Marshals can't be everywhere. And when you have this many players on site, law of averages, if nothing else, says that something's going to happen at some point. So I don't particularly blame the site for that at all. One thing I did notice about the players, actually, they're a lot more tactical. And what I mean by this, players tended to go around in like small squads or units of like organized groups of people that have come for this specific thing. They all had a lot of radio communication. It definitely felt a lot more organized among the players. It's not the usual skirmish site of just mad mob just rushes towards the objective and hopes for the best. Like the players were like communicating a lot more, but not as an entire cohesive team, as small individual squads. And I think this is mainly due to how the site itself plays that really lends itself well to this, because it's quite big, but you have individual like locations where things can get a bit heated. So squad-based tactics work a lot better than like a mob or big team sort of thing. So yeah, the players were definitely a lot more organized. So if you're the kind of person that wants that kind of experience, something for you to keep in mind there. So what was the site terrain like then? What does it feel like to play in? Now, Anzio Camp is a long-abandoned MOD base, which means that it's a really built-up area, and the main attraction is all the buildings on site that you absolutely are able to fight through. All the windows in these buildings have been removed, which means they are breachable from a multitude of unexpected angles. Are the enemy team covering the main door? Cool, just go in through the window. Are they firing from the second floor? Well, infiltrate the floor below and then clear them out. The site is pretty huge as well, with plenty of outdoor space. So if you don't fancy yourself any really close-range CQB, it is entirely possible to spend your time outside of the main buildings and still contribute. The Marshals were also operating a Snatch Land Rover on site as well, with a mounted minigun on the roof. Not for players to use, sadly, but it could lay down a punishing amount of suppressive fire, allowing players to close in the game and flank the other team. It can be quite slippery on the grass here, however, especially as the areas between buildings, it gets quite muddy under all the traffic and footfall, especially during the winter months, so decent footwear is still very much recommended. One thing I will say about the buildings, however, the state they're currently in. The 4D buildings at the top of the site are still in a fairly decent condition. However, the pub and the embassy in particular are really looking a bit worse for wear than I remember. It seems that between the plaster, ceiling and roof insulation coming down in places, There's this not particularly nice kind of sludge on the floor that they seem to have swept up into piles, and in some places the roof beams are completely exposed to the elements. You can be in a downstairs floor and you can see sky when you look up. Whilst the floor sludge can be somewhat managed and avoided, I think that I have some concerns about how long these two buildings are going to last before the roofs need to be removed entirely for safety reasons. The lower end of the site is also populated by a lot of hay bales that are filled with waste, and over the years these have inevitably deteriorated somewhat. Definitely a cosmetic issue rather than an actual one, but worth noting. But playing through the site, you have paved roads the entire way through. So if you want to keep off the mud, you can. If you want to stay in the buildings the entire time, you can. If you don't want hardcore CQB, you can spend your entire time outside and still have a really good time on this site. So, what type of games were on offer during the day then? To start the day off, we had a very simple infection game type. There was a small team of attackers stationed in the car park, and the vast majority of players were stationed as defenders in the pub and the embassy. The attackers were on instant regen, and every defender that got hit had to join the attacking team. For me, I tend to find that games like this are more enjoyable if you either start on the attacking team or are actively trying to find and fight off the attackers and get hit early, as it's really easy for a defender to end up in a quiet corner where you spend most of the game not in contact with the other team and not much happens for you. The next game was a vehicle escort. Our team had to get the Land Rover to 4 distinct points on the map and hold position there for a few minutes. If the other team were able to eliminate the rover's escort, it wouldn't be able to travel to the next point, and it would turn its gun on us until we were able to try and take it back. This game really opened up the entirety of the site for playing, and this is where Anzio Camp really shines in my opinion. Yes, escorting the Land Rover is the primary objective, but splitting off from the team to preemptively make sure the next location is clear is still very much helping your side. As for the other team, since they knew that the Land Rover would be touring the site, this allowed them to set up ambushes and choke points about the place. And since you know that most of the players will be around said rover, it means the rest of the site is mostly clear of hostiles. So you can go on some really long sneaky flanking actions to pop up from an unexpected angle or set up in a forgotten building and help cut off enemy reinforcements. As should be apparent, I absolutely love this game. The next game was to capture and hold the embassy for as long as possible, with teams spawning from either the pub or bunker on either side of it. The distance between buildings makes this a very fair and quick game to get into, and due to the embassy's central location and many points of entry, it's likely to change hands and control multiple times during the game. The rest of the site was still open during this game as well, providing plenty of flanking opportunities, but also the risk that players could get bogged down in a firefight far away from the actual objective if they weren't careful. The next game was something of a turnaround of the vehicle escort, but this time the other team was directing the vehicle and they started from a different end of the site. But they also had a specific player who was a technician setting up IEDs along the road for the following game. We were actually able to capture the Land Rover entirely and escort it to the other side of the map where we had to defend it for the remainder of the game. Now, I like how this wasn't just a simple turnaround of the previous game. Thought had gone into it to keep it fresh, and I always like it when games set up a little bit of narrative, either as fluff to set up the scene, but also because since we stopped some of these IDs from being planted, it means what we did in this game would have a tangible impact on the next one, which gives it a sense of purpose and helps your players get invested in the game. I had to call it the day before I could see what the next game looked like, but considering how it sounded like a convoy ambush based on the IDs that were laid, it certainly sounded like it was going to be a fun one. So ultimately then, should you pay a visit to Anzio Camp? Now, Anzio's always had a bit of a unique appeal for me. Like the fighting through the built-up area, the buildings is just... I've never been anywhere else that offers the amount of variety of playstyles here that comes close to it. There are other sites with a mix of outdoor and CQB. The jail comes to mind. But the fact that all the windows on the buildings are removed, it just gives you so many opportunities to be sneaky. My favourite thing to do on this site is just to go on a long angle, come in through a window of a building and just clear the whole thing because everyone's looking the wrong way. It just makes you feel so good being able to take on that many people at once with it. And I can't think of another site that offers a similar experience. Like the Land Rover going around as well really adds to it as well, so you've got extra bits on the site. They've really thought about the games, like putting in a little bit of narrative, a bit of setup for the next games. I really dig that. Like that really does speak to me. I have concerns about the longevity of the site, however, mainly the roof on the pub and the embassy. Like all the stuff that's come down from the ceiling is just formed this horrible sludge on the floor that is just not particularly nice. And the hay bales in the car park have really started to like split open, and there's some trash coming out of them. It gives the feel of a site that is slowly deteriorating. I think a little bit of a cleanup action and just a refresh, just to deal with some of the trash, wrap up the hay bales again, clear out some of the stuff from the pub and the embassy, and with those roof beams exposed, I think something has to be done with them structurally, otherwise they're going to be on a bit of a timer. But yeah, there are downsides to that, but they are cosmetic ones. Like, as long as they take the roof seriously, those buildings will last a lot longer. But I don't think the cosmetic feel of it being a bit like deteriorating with that, it's not enough to outweigh the fact this is a really fun site to play at. Like, I can't think of anywhere else that gives the same experience. And I just love those flanking actions so much, like actually breaching in through a building, because everyone just assumes, oh, it's a building. Like, yeah, we'll cover the doors. It's fine. No, windows are gone. I'll just hop on through when no one's looking. It's just, yeah, love it. That is something that I think every airsofter needs to experience at least once, because I can't think you can find that anywhere else. So yeah, I do very much recommend a visit to Anzio camp. Now, I know my review's been a bit a mix of positive and negative with this one, but I do love the site, and I think you will too. But if you've got any comments or your own opinions of the site, feel free to leave them in the comments section down below. I hope you've enjoyed this video review, and until next time, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.